Welcome to Betting with the Bag. It's the late afternoon edition. It's Tuesday, June 25th. I'm Ian Cameron filling in for Jimmy the Bag as we take you through the lead up to the Tuesday night Major League Baseball betting card. First pitch with the 7 p.m. Eastern games about 90 minutes away. And these are going to be our final picks, final wagers that we're going to place right now on the Tuesday night slate. We talked about these games earlier. And now we're going to start locking some things in terms of what we're looking at here on this Tuesday night betting card. We do indeed have a special guest joining me at the top of the hour, 6 p.m. Eastern. My old pal, I've missed him dearly. I haven't been able to be on any show with him in what seems like months, seems like ages, to be honest with you. That's how long it's been. But it'll be good to be back together again with Donnie Rightside at Rightside VP on Twitter. It'll be great to catch up with him and also get his thoughts on the Tuesday night MLB card. Looking forward to having Donnie join me. Welcome to everybody in the chat. Yeah, you're putting up with me for a second straight time today. Hope you can all manage, hopefully, and cope with that until Jimmy gets back. Obviously, tomorrow is when we're expecting Jimmy back. But looking forward to breaking this down. We're going to go rapid fire with a lot of pace. At least as much pace as I can possibly go. We know how long-winded sometimes I can get, but we're going to try to get this pace picked up a little bit. Quickly rapid fire through the majority of the card before Donnie joins us at 6 p.m. And breaks down his opinions on this Tuesday night baseball slate. We're going to start with Mets-Phillies, top of the rotation. Lockett versus Arrieta. Phillies about minus 150, minus 155. We've seen a trickle of Phillies money come in a little bit since the last time we were on the air together at 11 a.m. The total 11 pretty much across the board. We have seen a half-run increase in the total. It was 10.5 earlier today, now up to about 11 across the board with the total. I am definitely involved here in terms of the total in this game, looking up and over the total of 10.5. Between the Mets and the Phillies here. Lockett, a guy I talked about last Thursday with Jimmy against the Cubs, a guy that got shelled, a guy that's had very limited success at the major league level. Talking about a guy that had not really done all that much with the Padres, got absolutely crushed in his first start with the New York Mets last week against Chicago, a game that I also bet the over in. Mets and Cubs last week. Lockett not even getting out of the third inning and giving up 6 runs in that game. He just did not pitch well at all. The Phillies lineup, by the way, is out. Gabe Kapler coming to his senses. He's got Harper in the 3 spot, which is where he should be. No leadoff nonsense with Bryce Harper tonight, much like last night. So kudos to him for realizing his mistake, recognizing it, and rectifying it. That's exactly what he's done here. He's going to lead off with Scott Kingery, the center fielder, Gene Segura, the shortstop, batting second, Harper, Hoskins, batting cleanup, JT Realmuto, the catcher, batting fifth, Jay Bruce, batting sixth. Jay Bruce, I'll tell you what, Jay Bruce is like a honeymoon when a team first gets this guy. Like when he first arrives at a new team, it's like he goes on a hitting spree. You know, home runs here, home runs there, doubles here, doubles everywhere. Big time production early on, and then he just falls off the map and basically goes quiet again. So, but right now, Bruce, for the most part, since joining the Phillies, has been solid for them. Cesar Hernandez batting 7th, Maikel Franco 8th, and of course Arrieta 9th. For the New York Mets, they're pretty much not a whole lot of changes with their lineup going into tonight. The usual suspects, Jeff McNeil leading it off, Pete Alonso, who's having a monster season, batting 2nd, Robinson Cano, and don't you know, he's not the same guy. Not this season, at least, for the New York Mets. He's batting 3rd, hitting cleanup. Michael Conforto, Todd Frazier in the 5-hole. Dominic Smith batting 6th. Wilson Ramos, the catcher, batting 7th. Ahmed Rosario, the shortstop, batting 8th. And, of course, Walker Lockett, your pitcher, batting 9th. So I think that I like the lineups. You don't have any big-time bats out of the lineup. I can live with J.D. Davis out of the lineup for the Mets. I can live with Carlos Gomez out of the lineup, who's a guy that's very erratic offensively. When he's in a hot streak, look out. when he's ice cold, you want no part of him. Adeiny Hechavarria is also on the bench tonight for Mickey Callaway's group. Again, that's in terms of those guys, not exactly bats that I'm longing for here in this lineup tonight. So I do think the Mets will score a little bit against Arrieta. I know Arrieta's track record against the Mets solid, but I think the Mets' current form with their lineup, their offense hasn't been the problem. It's been getting outs from their starters, getting outs from their relievers. So I think they'll put some runs on the board. I lean to Philadelphia as well in some form, probably the run line, either laying a run or a run and a half. The Philly team total over is definitely something that's worth a look, in my opinion, as well. I do have a bet on that Phillies team total. But my biggest bet on this game is definitely over 10.5. It's up to 11 right now. I probably wouldn't go much more than that. We've already seen this total move upward, but over the total, full game is what I'm looking at here. Locked in official play for me, Mets and Phillies. Next up, Nationals, Marlins. I'm going to be very quick with this one because I have no bet right now on this game. I would probably lean first 5 innings under the total, because I think Scherzer's going to shut down the Marlins. I think Richards, on the other hand, from Miami, he's had pretty good numbers at home this season. He could be able to get at least a couple of turns through the Nationals lineup without a whole lot of damage being done at the very beginning. So I'm looking at this as maybe a first 5 inning under. It's just a lean. Did not pull the trigger here on this particular game at all, side or total. Obviously, you're paying a price to paying a tax, as you usually are with Max Scherzer on the mound for this Nationals team. I remember it was Anthony this morning who was with me on the morning show talking about liking the first 5 run line with the Washington Nationals in this game. Definitely something worth considering. Definitely you're going to get a little bit better value there. The Nationals bullpen, albeit they've been a little bit better, that's not saying a lot because they've been such a bad bullpen for the majority of the season, but they have been a little bit better in recent games. Quickly, lineup information. We'll hand these out game by game as we move along here on our way, move on down the card. Let's see here. Marlins and Nationals for the Miami Marlins, or for the Nationals, I should say. Trey Turner, Adam Eaton, Anthony Rendon, Juan Soto, Howie Kendrick, Kurt Suzuki, Brian Dozier, Victor Robles, and of course Scherzer, the pitcher. That's your lineup. For the Miami Marlins, Miguel Rojas, Garrett Cooper, Brian Anderson. Brian Anderson's actually been a nice surprise here for the Marlins. He's been the one guy that's given them some pop consistently in this lineup. Even Cooper, the last few games, has been pretty decent at the plate. Starlin Castro, you're batting 4th. Neil Walker, 5th. Curtis Granderson, who's usually either a strikeout or a home run waiting to happen. He's batting 6th. JT Riddle, the center fielder, batting 7th. Wilkin Castillo, the catcher, in 8th. And Trevor Richards, of course, the pitcher. So that's your lineup for the Marlins in that one. Again, my lean here, first 5 under. Didn't get involved, though, with anything official on that game. Atlanta Cubs at Wrigley Field. Max Fried for the Atlanta Braves. Adbert Alzolay for the Chicago Cubs. A very highly touted prospect. I did some reading on him, not only last night and this morning, but a little bit more this afternoon as well. They've got this guy pegged as like maybe the 3rd or 4th biggest and brightest pitching prospect right now in this Chicago Cubs farm system, in this organization. So there's definitely high hopes for him. If you watched him pitch last week in his major league debut, it was in a relief stint. It wasn't a start like this is going to be. So it's definitely going to be a little bit of a different dynamic. It's still a young guy that's, making this is his first official start. I know he made that brief appearance earlier here, but you're looking at a situation, I think, where it's just a little different. Your nervous system maybe is a little bit off in this going into a game like this, but definitely I think he's capable of handling it going into this game. I certainly like the swing and miss ability that he has. Max Fried has been not quite as sharp, you could say, the last month or so for the Atlanta Braves going up against this Cubs team. And the Cubs lineup certainly had their way with Julio Teheran and the Braves last night, putting up an 8 spot in an 8-3 victory against the Atlanta Braves in the series opener. Certainly a good sign for them. Fried, the lefty, against this Cubs lineup. We'll see how he fares there. He pitched a gem against them back in April. But again, you sort of have to split Fried's season into 2 separate entities and 2 separate quadrants, you could say, or 2 separate parts, because early in the season he was very good. He was catching a lot of teams by surprise. That's not necessarily been the case for Max Fried in recent outings. He's definitely had a much tougher go of it. He was winless before beating in 4 starts before beating the Mets in his last start, but he still had a really tough go overall. So we'll see if he's able to get it back on track here. He does have that good track record against the Cubs, but on the road here at Wrigley, I'm not sure. I'm not confident that he's going to fare well. He's one of these guys that when you look at it, you're just not sure what you're going to get from him in a particular start against a particular opponent, and that's the way I feel right here tonight about Max Fried. It gives me a pause to want to back him or the Atlanta Braves. The Chicago Cubs, again, I was close with the Cubs pulling the trigger on this on Alzolay because I think he does have a lot of upside. And the ceiling is pretty high on this young kid. But, he is facing an Atlanta Braves lineup that has been extremely good, for an extended period of time now. So it's not like they're throwing him out there against the Miami Marlins or the Detroit Tigers or one of the absolute, worst offenses in baseball. So to me, I'm looking at this as a situation here where I'm going to lean to the Cubs here a little bit. The Atlanta team offensively, they have regressed just a little bit, and that's probably a little bit of a concern here going in to this game against this young kid who's got the potential to maybe mow them down just a little bit. We'll see if he's able to do that. The Atlanta bullpen was roughed up a little bit, but I don't think they had many of their key relievers in the game. They were trailing at that time. So I'll lean Cubs here in this game in terms of lineups for this Reds or for this Braves and Cubs game. We've got Ronald Acuna, Dansby Swanson, Freddie Freeman, Josh Donaldson, Nick Markakis, Austin Riley, Brian McCann, Ozzie Albies, and the pitcher Max Fried. So this is pretty consistent with this lineup that we've seen. The Atlanta Braves have not really tinkered with this lineup much in recent games. Why would they? I mean, it's been a potent lineup. For the Cubs, Schwarber, Bryant, Rizzo, Javier Baez, Wilson Contreras, who was at the forefront of that little kerfuffle last night with Tyler Flowers, the catcher of the Atlanta Braves. A little bit of almost a throwdown there between those two. David Bote, the third baseman, Addison Russell, Alzolay, the pitcher, batting in the 8th spot, and Albert Almora rounding out the Cubs lineup. So I'll lean to the Cubs here a little bit, but I didn't quite get there. I think Alzolay is a guy I'd be looking to back, but he's going up there against a good team right off the hop. We'll see if he's able to get the job done. Dodgers and Diamondbacks. We have Stripling against Ray. Dodgers -110, road favorites. The total 9.5 here in this game. Ross Stripling making his return into the starting rotation to fill the spot of Rich Hill, who is out due to injury. We're going to see how much of a leash that Dave Roberts puts on Ross Stripling, because we know the Dodgers bullpen has had to work a little bit extra in the Colorado series over the weekend, and again last night in the first game against Arizona with the rough outing from Clayton Kershaw. So we'll see how that affects this Dodgers bullpen going into this game tonight. Stripling, though, as a starter, a 2.65 ERA, but again, that came so much earlier in the season. It's hard to put a ton of stock into that. 3.78 ERA for him against Arizona. In his career. Robbie Ray, I talked about him on the morning show when we broke down this game. He does have decent track record against the LA Dodgers overall, although this season against LA, 4.5 ERA in 2 starts against them. And he's just a guy that, as good as the Dodgers lineup's been for extended period of time now, you got to figure they're going to be on base a little bit here tonight in this game. And as soon as I have that intuition or that feel or that belief that Robbie Ray is going to have base runners all night, I have a hard time trusting him, because I've mentioned on more than one occasion, you get this guy pitching out of the stretch, you get him pitching in a situation where, there's guys on base. He's absolutely not a guy I trust, to get outs. He seems like he's shaken. He seems like he's not at all comfortable pitching with guys on base, not at all comfortable with, pitching out of the stretch, and that's been a consistent concern I've got for him going into this outing. Stripling is probably the guy I would trust a little bit more, and I would certainly back the Dodgers or nothing in this game, but ultimately I chose nothing. Because Stripling hasn't been in this kind of role for a while. I don't know what I'm going to get from the Dodgers pen. I'll tell you what, if I like the Dodgers, if I were to take the Dodgers in some form, and that is the way I'm leaning, I'm not going to, but if I were to, the first 5 inning option might be a little bit more attractive in this kind of circumstance tonight because Dodgers bullpen is a little bit of a wild card. They've had to log a few more innings than they normally do the last 3-4 games going back to the weekend series against the Rockies. So to me, that's a little bit of a concern for them going into this game tonight. In terms of the two starting lineups we'll see in this game, Dodgers haven't announced theirs yet. Remember, this is a later game, 9:40 p.m. Eastern time, first pitch. Diamondbacks have their lineup out: Adam Jones, Ketel Marte, Eduardo Escobar, David Peralta, Christian Walker, Gerard Dyson, Nick Ahmed, Carson Kelly, and the pitcher Robbie Ray. So I'll lean Dodgers first 5 again, but nothing official. As of right now, the only thing I've got as an official play is that Mets-Phillies over 10.5. We move along to the Rockies and the Giants. Chichi Gonzalez, Madison Bumgarner, San Francisco minus 155, total 8 across the board. I'm on the over here. This is an official wager of mine. I'm going to go over the total with the Rockies and Giants here. It's 8. I know the Rockies only scored 2 runs. Giants get shut out last night by John Gray. But Chichi Gonzalez, I have no confidence in him at the major league level right now. This is a guy that's had multiple surgeries, coming off Tommy John, hasn't been in the majors since 2017. You look back at his 2016 numbers, which were with the Texas Rangers, nothing but ugly. You look at his AAA starts this season before this call up to the Colorado Rockies in Albuquerque, nothing but ugly. For Chichi Gonzalez, 5.4 ERA for him down in AAA this season. I mean, it's you're pulling teeth sometimes. I get it. I totally get the fear and maybe the trepidation people might have in trusting this the San Francisco Giants lineup here tonight. But this is Chichi Gonzalez, a guy that he's been around the block so many times now, and he's been out of the major league so long that they have to do something against him. That for as weak as the San Francisco lineup can be at times. Let's not forget they actually had a decent series offensively over the weekend against the Arizona Diamondbacks. I know they got shut out last night, but and another thing you have to factor in is Chichi Gonzalez is not a guy that I anticipate that's going to be out there for 6-7 innings here tonight in this start. Should see a lot of that Rockies bullpen, the same Rockies bullpen that absolutely gagged all over themselves multiple times over the weekend against the LA Dodgers. They're not a bullpen with a ton of great depth in terms of their relievers. And even, what's happened to Wade Davis? Wade Davis, the closer, has been absolutely despicable. Once again, remember this guy was a dominant closer a couple years ago with the Kansas City Royals, and it's been anything but that for him here in Colorado. So, it's a hold your nose play. And I see some people in the chat saying, maybe a 5-3 type of game. Yeah, this could easily land right on the number. It really could, and hell, it could stay under. For as much as I dislike Chichi, and as much as I think Madison Bumgarner, like I said on Twitter after his last start against the Dodgers, never mind Mad Bum, throw out the Mad, you get Bum. Bum is what you got right now out of him. A bum in Madison Bumgarner. He's been absolutely brutal, most of the season, especially in that last start. See if Colorado can get to him. So I'm going to go over 8 here. Again, I understand the sentiment. These aren't two prolific lineups by any stretch. No question about that. Colorado, too, at the plus price, from a pure price standpoint, makes some sense, but not with Chichi. Not with Chichi Gonzalez. That's just a crazy price, though, to back San Francisco. I mean, we're talking about Madison Bumgarner, who's nowhere near A status anymore at this stage of his career, and a bad team that he's pitching behind, laying minus 155. No, thank you. So for me, I'm going to go over the total here. I'm going to take my chances that we've got a struggling Bumgarner, a guy that I have no faith in, and Chichi Gonzalez back in the majors for the first time in years, and he wasn't any good to begin with when he was in the majors, that maybe these two lineups can do some damage tonight. So Colorado, San Francisco, over 8 for me in this game. Next up, Jays and Yankees in the Bronx. This red hot, scorching hot, sick Yankees lineup just continues to pound and bludgeon opposing pitching staff, starting pitching, bullpen. It doesn't matter. They're taking no prisoners right now, and they're just mashing opposing pitchers. Chad Green making the start for the Yankees, minus 270 favorites. They are. The total is 12 across the board here. Clayton Richard for the Jays. Here's another official play for me. No Yankee totals high enough right now. Really isn't. This is another one we've got some interest in over the total. Clayton Richard has been really hit around the last couple of starts. Fly ball guy in Yankee Stadium where he's given up some hard hit contact, where he's given up some home runs, which has been a little bit of an issue for him in recent starts. That's not good. And if you've seen this Yankee lineup, it looks like Aaron Boone is unleashing the hounds tonight because he has the luxury of basically cherry picking whatever lineup he wants because he's got so many options. He has a bench group of hitters right now that could formulate a pretty good B lineup for him right now with the way they are hitting the baseball right now. And even the guys that were so good in getting the job done at the plate for this team with all the injuries they had earlier in the season. So, there's a lot of ways that Aaron Boone can go constructing this lineup on a daily basis now that he's getting the healthy guys back. But you're looking at DJ LeMahieu leading off tonight. Aaron Judge back in the lineup after not being in it last night. Oh, and they still scored 10 runs in that game. Gary Sanchez in the 3 spot. Giancarlo Stanton batting cleanup. Luke Voigt batting 5th. Edwin Encarnacion, acquired from the Seattle Mariners last week, batting 6th. Aaron Hicks batting 7th, and he had a 3-run home run last night. Gleyber Torres in the 8th spot, and Gio Urshela, who has been one of the unsung heroes. Gio Urshela and DJ LeMahieu have been tremendous all season. When they were dealing with all those injuries to their lineup and their position players, it was guys like Gio Urshela, it was guys like DJ LeMahieu that kept this offense going for the New York Yankees. Absolutely disgusting how good the lineup is on paper. For the Jays, Charlie Montoyo not going with a whole lot of change. For the most part in his lineup. Eric Sogard, Vladdy Guerrero Jr., Lourdes Gurriel Jr., who's been really good. Kevin Biggio is usually going to give you a good at bat. Teoscar Hernandez is back in the lineup. He's been a little bit better at the plate since they recalled him from AAA recently. Rowdy Tellez has actually given them some power. He's batting 6th. Randall Grichuk is usually a home run or strikeout guy, batting 7th. Freddie Galvis, the shortstop, batting 8th. Danny Jansen batting 9th. Jays have gotten absolutely nothing production-wise out of the 9 holes, so it doesn't matter who's in there, whether it's Jansen or McKinney. They're interchangeable, and they both stink. They both have not done well offensively this season. So I'm going to go over the total Yankee team total over again. If you want to keep attacking that and going that route, I don't argue with that right now. But again, we're talking about a Yankees lineup that has been absolutely scorching it. It's right on the periphery of a number when it's 12 like it is here, where I get a little bit not nauseous, but a little bit scared going over a total much higher than 12 when it's not at Coors Field. But this Yankees team right now is just crushing the ball. And Richard's a prime hard hit contact home run guy. I mean, he's been giving up that kind of contact lately. It makes me worried about how he's going to fare here in this game. And again, for the Yankees, it's going to be primarily a bullpen game. I like some of their back-end relievers, but their middle relief's nothing to write home about. They just sent down Jonathan Holder yesterday after another dismal showing from him. The Yankees do have some suspect arms in that middle relief core. Obviously, you like the guys at the back end of that bullpen, but some of these middle relief guys I don't trust. And the Jays are probably going to see some of them tonight. So I think the Jays will be able to get on the scoreboard a little bit too in this game, and the Yankees will take care of the rest. So the over 12 is a bet of mine here tonight. Kansas City, Cleveland, Sparkman, and Bieber. I'm not going to spend too much time on this game. I have not really much of an opinion here. Obviously, Cleveland playing better baseball should win this game. They won the the game that was delayed due to rain last night. It didn't end until after midnight. They pull it out in extra innings. Sparkman did pitch a lot better against the Twins. Always, and if you pitch that well against the Twins, you're more than capable of maybe having a decent outing here against the Cleveland Indians. But he struggled on the road, 7.82 ERA for him on the road. Shane Bieber is probably a little bit of a regression candidate. There's no question. He didn't pitch exactly all that great against the Royals last year, 6.35 ERA, but the Royals lineup can be a little bit spotty. I just don't have much of interest overall or much of a strong opinion from a betting perspective here on this game going into it. So probably a pass for me overall with that. It is a pass. White Sox and Red Sox, same here. Fulmer against Price. Carson Fulmer's not a guy that I trust at Fenway, period, end of story. Here in this kind of starting role. David Price, give him credit. He's been pretty good. Red Sox should win this game, but their bullpen is still a little bit of a concern for me, this Red Sox team. And again, you're talking about a minus 285 price with a team that, let's be honest, we just saw them lose 2 or 3 on the weekend against Toronto, and they barely beat the White Sox in the first game of this series yesterday. So to me, I've got my issues right now laying this kind of a price with Boston. Boston's not winning games easily right now. They're not blowing through the opposition. They showed it on the weekend against Toronto, showed it yesterday against the Chicago White Sox. So to me, very, very tough game. I don't think Chicago wins it, so I can't take them. But there's no value for me personally, at least, on Boston. So leaving that one alone. Texas, Detroit. There's a such thing as maybe my play of the day. This is probably it. I really like the over in this game. I mentioned that on the morning show. Over 9.5. The over's 5-0 in Jordan Zimmerman's last 5 starts for the Detroit Tigers. He's just not been any good. I mean, other than a couple of starts way back in April, ever since then it's been one slaughtering after another for Jordan Zimmerman. I mean, he's just not been a guy that's been able to get any sort of confidence going. He comes back off the injured list for that start against Pittsburgh, and it really wasn't all that much better, really wasn't all that much more effective. I think he's going to struggle here against this Texas Rangers team. Jesse Chavez making a spot start for the Rangers out of their bullpen for this game. He's certainly a guy that's done this before, but I think there's going to be a little bit of a leash on him. I don't like the fact that his track record against or in this ballpark, specifically against at Comerica Park, has not been good. He's given up 19 runs, 30 hits, and 18 career innings pitched here at Comerica Park. That's not a good sign. I'm not going to pretend like Detroit's a great lineup by any stretch of the imagination, but we have seen them perk up a little bit in terms of their offense the last week or so. Nico Goodrum and Castellanos and Cabrera and Jones even has done a decent job at the plate for them lately. They've had a little bit of an uptick in their offense. They're certainly not a great offensive team or a great lineup. I'm not going to convince you that they are. I'm not going to pretend that they are. But when you're talking about a dormant offense that's actually finally stepping up at least a little bit, and again, it's not like they're facing brilliant pitching on the Texas side. They're going to have to dive deep into their bullpen here tonight with Chavez not likely to eat up a ton of innings for them. Again, the weather's extremely warm. The wind is going to be making those balls fly just a little bit. You could say that about Detroit. You could say that about Boston. You could say that about New York. You could really say that about Philadelphia because the winds there at Citizens Bank Park tonight pushing out just a little bit really could be beneficial for making the ball carry and leading to a few more home runs and long balls. So definitely a situation where I think we're going to be able to see some runs scored here in this game between Texas and Detroit tonight. So over 9.5. I already made that an official play for me on the card tonight on the morning show at 11 a.m. Still stays that way. It's 10 across the board right now, shaded slightly to the over. Would still look in that direction. I believe Anthony, my pal from the morning show, liked the Texas side here in terms of a road favorite. Parlay Poppy, by the way, who was on me. I see him in the chat. Good to see him in the chat. Great to have him with me this morning on the show. He loved the Phillies Mets game. He liked Philadelphia -1. He liked Philly team total over and also the full game over, and I'm definitely in agreement with that. Again, I think it should be a very, very good night at the plate here for the Philadelphia Phillies against Lockett and a Mets bullpen that A is struggling and B has been at the forefront of the controversy off the field with the Mets dating back to Sunday with Mickey Callaway's little tirade against the Met beat reporter for his bullpen usage on Sunday. Tampa Bay, Minnesota. We've got Blake Snell against Kyle Gibson in this matchup. Near pick'em pretty much on both sides, -105 even money. The total 9.5 shaded to the under. Anthony made a case for the Twins on the morning show, liking them in this game. I'm making a case for Minnesota as well here in this game. We talked about the issues that I think we've got with Blake Snell going into this game. So it's definitely a situation where I've got concerns. We know Twins against lefty pitching this season is usually a very good matchup for them. And we brought up some interesting points about Snell. Not only did Snell get absolutely crushed against the Yankees, and he's been hit hard in recent outings, but another concern, and Anthony documented this, is that his spin rates are down. His velocity has dropped a little bit. Now, his velocity's not dropped off a cliff. There are some guys when there's fear of an injury or fear of a guy maybe going on the injured list, there's a chance that their velocity could tick down 4 or 5 miles per hour. It's only 2 or 3 miles per hour that we're seeing in terms of the decline in Blake Snell's velocity. But it still seems to me that there's enough concern here that this guy may not be 100% right from a health perspective right now. And that is absolutely something that I've got some major concerns with here against a Twins team that, had the day off yesterday. They lost the final game of that series against Kansas City. I know this team wasn't happy with the way they played in the series against the Kansas City Royals over the weekend. And you have to expect when it's a team like the Minnesota Twins, that's just come out of, I don't want to say come out of nowhere, but let's be honest. Did you think the Minnesota Twins would be more than 20 games above 500 at this stage of the season? No, we did not. We didn't really see this coming early on. You knew there had to be some leveling off with their offense at some point, and maybe we saw signs of that on the weekend against Kansas City. But Rocco Baldelli made sure he gave this team a little bit of a day off yesterday. Get a breather, exhale. It's not been the greatest of stretches the last week or so for the Minnesota Twins, so they should be well rested, ready to go, ready to bounce back, and certainly from a pitching perspective, against Blake Snell. With the way he's been going lately, it should be a favorable matchup for them. Kyle Gibson is a guy that's not really going to enamor certainly the advanced metrics people, but he's been steady for the Minnesota Twins. He's given them a chance to win. Kyle Gibson is what he is. Now, last start against Boston, he got roughed up, but tough place to play. Pretty decent Red Sox lineup, but he had allowed no more than one run in 3 of his previous 4 starts before that outing against Boston. And I think, back home at Target Field, he's not going to mow you down likely, but if he can keep you to like 3 runs in 6 innings, that's basically the kind of profile you get from a guy like Kyle Gibson. Keep the Twins in the game, have them a chance to win it early on. Let's not forget Tampa Bay's bullpen's been a complete and utter disaster lately. This bullpen for the Rays has really had a tough time. The Twins bullpen should have a little bit of a ladder edge in the late innings in this game. So I'm on board with Anthony. Anthony liked Minnesota, and I like Minnesota. And Minnesota off a loss has been terrific this season. Their win-loss record off a defeat has been terrific. It's been great for them all year. So I'm going to back the Twins here at about minus 105, that even money price. This is an official play for me with the Rays and the Twins looking at Minnesota with Gibson against Snell, who, again, not pitching well, not in great form. Twins do well against lefty pitching, and we do have concerns with the spin rate decline, with the velocity decline. That Blake Snell may be finding his way on the injured list pretty soon. It's got all the red flags and all the warning signs of a guy that's not 100% healthy right now. That's a concern for me. All right, it's time to get to our special guest. Man, I've missed this guy. I've missed that era of shows that we had here at SBR when, remember, we did the round table every single Wednesday. It was me, it was Drew Martin, it was Big Man on Campus, and it was this guy who's about to join me now in a few seconds. Donnie Rightside. You can find him every single day here on the SBR channels doing that betting show with a guy that I've actually known even longer than Donnie, Teddy Covers. They do that show together every single day on the SBR channels. He also has been part of the Audible, the NFL show with Whale Capper and Jimmy the Bag. And now Donnie Rightside and me are reunited, and it feels so good on Betting with the Bag, ready to break down the Tuesday baseball card. Donnie, welcome into the show. How are you, my good friend?
Oh, awesome, man. Look at you pulling double duty today on the channels, man. That's pretty impressive stuff right there.
I know, it's wearing me out, Donnie. I mean, you're used to doing so many different shows. This is the first time I've had to do 2-3 hours of video content work in it seems like months. So it's like I'm hyperventilating here. It's like I'm sweating, working up a sweat here. I'm not used to it at all. But Donnie, good to be with you. I know you've had a really nice little run lately in Major League Baseball. I can't lie. This is not even close to being my best season ever. It is, and it's not even close. I mean, it's been a tremendous baseball season for me so far. I didn't see it coming, but it's been working. And I know what's been working for me, Donnie. It's been full game overs for the most part. Like the 90% of my stronger bets are full game overs because it's worked out well. We've dissected these matchups. We really target good lineups and good lineups, bad bullpens, bad starters. We've really used that kind of philosophy to good effect and success this season. And I know for you, you've really been focusing on team totals in Major League Baseball, and you've been doing pretty well with those. So talk about how things are going with you, Donnie, in terms of your baseball betting this season.
No, yeah, it's been funny, but you bring up a really good point now because in the past, I mean, it wasn't so long ago that we were taking a look at Major League Baseball totals, and be like, "Ooh, it's 8.5. That's a little bit high. I wish it was 8 or less." I mean, 8 is almost a steal and a bargain at this point. To bring up your point, taking the full game over. I've never seen it like this because in the past, a lot of times we like to change up our scenarios and how we like to focus on things, taking a look at like first fives because you want to isolate just the pitcher against itself. But I find myself more and more, there's times, Ian, where I'm taking a team total or a full game total, and it's like, oh man, they only have like 1 or 2 after 5 innings. And then they blow up the bullpen on the back end. The old adage goes right now with Major League Baseball, Ian, is the same simple equation. If you're taking an under and you win, you flat out just got lucky.
It's amazing. I mean, look at the poor bastards that had the under in the Angels and Cardinals game on Sunday night. I mean, that was absolutely disgusting. You think you're actually home and cool. You think, and 2-0 going into the 9th inning, and all of a sudden just a bullpen massacre on both sides, and that game ends up 6-4, and you end up losing under 9.5. Absolutely brutal beat there. Even the Atlanta Braves Chicago Cubs game last night, which was a scoreless going into the 4th inning, or it was 1-0, I should say, going into the 5th inning or so. And at that point, the Tehran falls apart. The Atlanta bullpen gives up some runs. Chicago starts to give up runs late, and you're hanging on for dear life if you had under 11.5. Now, you did get there. It ended 8-3, but by the skin of your teeth, by the hair of your chinny chin, you cashed that under last night. So, Donnie, it's proof that, you've got to hold your breath taking unders right now. And the odds makers are slowly adjusting, though. Now we're seeing a lot more 10s, 10.5s, 11s. The weather is starting to really get warm, especially in the Northeast and Midwest United States. So it's definitely a situation where the odds makers are adjusting. The question is, when is that pendulum finally going to swing the other way and we start seeing some more unders moving forward? Donnie, I'll open the floor to you in terms of the overall look on this betting card. What game in particular do you want to start with talking about that piqued your interest tonight?
Yeah, the one that you brought up earlier, Ian, which I thought was a really good point, because we're taking a look at the New York Yankees at this point. And before you even saw, I didn't even care who the starter was coming out today, if it was going to be Chad Green or not Chad Green, because looking at just the team total, the way the Yankees are operating right now, I was joking on my earlier show before we actually got the totals out, and I said, Ian, anything less than 8, do you just automatically take the Yankees team total over? 1 through 9, that lineup absolutely mashes, and they just sit on the 3-run blast. The perfect scenario yesterday, Ian, with the New York Yankees. You say, oh my goodness, look at that. Somebody's finally going to have a ground ball pitcher out there in that tiny ballpark up there, the Bronx. They're going to hold them down. It's the 5th inning. The Yankees haven't scored yet. Fast forward a half hour. The Yankees have 10 runs on the board. So now you're looking at team totals of 7.5, which means you have to get 8 runs outside of Coors Field at 90 degrees with the wind blowing out 15 miles an hour in order to cash that total. It's unbelievable. So to your earlier point saying, the odds makers are catching up, today might be one of those first days where I see, which I like a lot of these totals still on the board, but how many times, Ian? We're getting 11s in Philadelphia. We're getting 12.5s in New York. This isn't even Colorado, and we're needing 13 runs to score in some of these games.
And these places that you're usually used to seeing, basically 9, 10 runs, or 8.5s, 9s, even at Yankee Stadium. You'll get 9.5s at Yankee Stadium. This is now 11.5. And 12 that we're seeing, for instance, with the Blue Jays and Yankees. And we're seeing this now. We're seeing these even in Atlanta. We're talking about National League parks where there's a pitcher, in the 9-hole, and you're still seeing just astronomical totals. And, of course, the Mets-Phillies is another one. Although in that particular instance, I still think it's too low, that number. I've seen enough of Walker Lockett to know, Donnie, that I think you're fighting Phillies or should be able to do something offensively tonight against him and this absolutely overworked and struggling Mets bullpen behind him. And again, I talk about it with bullpens all the time. When you know the starter's not going to go deep and it's a bad bullpen and it's a struggling bullpen and they've been worked hard recently like the Mets bullpen has, that is a bad combination in terms of trying to prevent runs against the opponent.
No, you're absolutely right, because when you take a look at Philadelphia, and it all starts, there's a couple things that you like to look into when you're trying to bet a team total over or just an over, even under in a game. I live just outside the city of Philadelphia, only about 5 or 6 miles, Ian. It's the same weather it was last night. It's hot. It's humid. It's a small ballpark. That ball's going to fly out. You're right. Lockett's going to come to the mound tonight. But even looking at both of these teams, when you actually look at the Mets lineup tonight, Ian, it's not a bad lineup. The only thing that kept me off of the Mets team total over, which is 4.5, and I actually still think they have a great shot to get it because I think you're going to get into a little bit of a track meet situation tonight, is the fact that I need more left-handed hitters. Left-handed hitters are the way to attack Jake Arrieta. He's got some pretty good numbers against right-handed batters. But when you're just looking from an overall perspective in this one, once Jake Arrieta leaves the game for for the Phillies. Look, I understand Neshek's rested, their bullpen is rested. Nobody can put out the fire, it seems. The J.D. Hammers of the world that looks like Corey Haim from, movies of the 1980s. That's not going to get the job done. But I do like the Philadelphia Phillies team total, even though it is expensive at 5.5. They broke out last night. And if anybody follows me on Twitter, I've been screaming at my TV screen for the last week, seeing why Bryce Harper is batting first. The equivalent of that, Ian, is if the Philadelphia Eagles struggle 1 week and then put Carson Wentz at tight end because they're trying to get the offense going. It was ridiculous. They went with a legitimate lineup last night and absolutely raked. They're going to do it again tonight because now you throw Jay Bruce in there, and that 1 through 8 is really formidable. And what type of resistance do you have on the New York Mets on the mound at this point? Phillies should be able to tack 6 or more on tonight. I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah, I definitely agree. And I was on the over with the Cubs and the Mets last week with Lockett in his first start. And I said, I looked at his numbers in San Diego when he was in the Padres organization. They weren't any good. Minor leagues, not anything to write home about. And then, of course, he gets that first start against a capable enough Cubs team. And sure, the first 2 innings, he flew along pretty well. And then the third inning, the roof caved in on the guy. He just got 1 out, gave up 6 runs in that 1 inning alone, and he was out of there. So Lockett's not a guy I trust in that matchup. We're going to pick up the card with where we left off. San Diego, Baltimore, Allen and Yacobonis in this matchup. San Diego minus 190, total 11. Starting to show now in a bunch of different books. It opened 9.5, went up to 10.5, now 11 showing. So you're talking about 1.5 runs upward with this total. Allen actually had a very good first start in his debut, in my opinion, for the San Diego Padres. Pitched pretty well against a solid lineup in the Milwaukee Brewers, I believe, in that first outing. So wasn't bad at all. 3 hits, 7 scoreless innings. Pretty solid stuff for him. That was a very interesting start, considering he didn't have great numbers at AAA down in El Paso. 5.15 ERA for him in AAA, but he ends up shutting out the Brewers and doing a great job there. Yacobonis, this is a guy that actually had the over with in his last start against Oakland. This is a guy that is just going to be a spot start. He's one of those openers. He's going to give way to Josh Rogers. And then who the hell else in this Baltimore bullpen? And specifically, who the hell else do you trust to get outs? Because I'll tell you what, Baltimore, one of the worst bullpens in baseball. And when you have a bad bullpen in what is essentially going to be a bullpen game like this is going to be, for the Baltimore Orioles, you would think there's going to be opportunities here for the San Diego Padres to plate their share of runs with, some of the guys that they can still put out there. I mean, Ian Kinsler's not the same hitter, but you've still got Machado, you've still got Hosmer, you've still got some quality bats in there. Margot certainly flashed potential. Fernando Tatis Jr. certainly showing a boatload of potential so far this season for the Padres. I mean, they should be able to hit Yacobonis and this slew of not very good relievers for the Orioles. The question is, what will you get from Baltimore against Logan Allen? And I'm not really sure. His AAA numbers say he shouldn't be ready for the major leagues. Then lo and behold, he comes up here and he absolutely dominates a pretty good Milwaukee Brewers team. Now, albeit that was in Petco, this is at Camden Yards, totally different setting for him. We'll see if he's ready to handle it. I would think San Diego team total over would be something of interest. Donnie, any thoughts on this game?
Yeah, I was close on that, and you bring up a good point from last week because we were joking around that Oakland game. I was actually on a team total for the Oakland Athletics versus the same setup with Yacobonis and then coming in, as the opener and then having the pitcher behind him. And the interesting part about that game was, Ian, is Oakland started out slow. They had some runners on base, couldn't cash in versus Yacobonis. But even if Yacobonis is pitching well, what's he going? 2 max innings, and then you're going to have 7 straight innings of full bullpen. But to your initial point there, if your bullpen stinks and it's an all bullpen game, we're going to be playing in Camden Yards, 88 degrees at first pitch in a small ballpark. And oh yeah, correct me if I'm wrong, Ian, I think that Baltimore Orioles staff gives up quite a bit of home runs. That ball should be flying down there. I didn't play it myself in San Diego, but my initial card had that game circled to look forward to. It's the only way I could think of this game. It's San Diego for me, and it's the team total for San Diego. And you're right. What are you actually going to get out of Baltimore? Because I'm not too familiar with the pitcher from San Diego. Usually like to see him maybe on 1 or 2 loops through there if I have a couple question marks. But there's no reason to believe that San Diego can't get off to a really hot start against the Orioles tonight, Ian.
Yeah, I think San Diego scores some runs. To me, it's a question of what Baltimore does, because Baltimore's offense does have some pop and power, but they also have a lot of swings and misses. They really swing out of their shoes at times, and Allen's got that kind of junk ball mentality that could maybe throw this team off a little bit. So that's the one concern. I'm not sure what you would get from Baltimore offensively tonight. Seattle-Milwaukee. Very interesting game. I know I talked about it with one of our guests this morning on this show, talking about how Marco Gonzalez has all of a sudden put 3 great starts together out of nowhere, when prior to that he had really been roughed up. You could question the caliber of lineups that he's faced in those 3 starts, but there's no doubt he has pitched a little bit better in the shorter term. Zach Davies, this guy has been pegged for weeks as a regression candidate. I know the metrics guys and the advanced stats guys have been eagerly anticipating waiting for the other shoe to drop on Zach Davies. Oh, and it's dropped. And it's dropped in a big way in his last few starts. He's been roughed up repeatedly. Zach Davies has certainly had his share of struggles. The question is, what will you get from this Mariners offense, the Mariners lineup that's been weakened at least a little bit after trading Edwin Encarnacion to the New York Yankees? Vogelbach, though, is a guy that's still capable. Santana's had a pretty good season at the plate for Seattle. If you could only get something out of Kyle Seager, and Kyle Seager's, got a 220-something average. We're still waiting for him to really dial it in and get going to the level that we think he's capable still of hitting at the major league level, but it hasn't been great for him. The question is, does Gonzalez, is his recent success and his shorter term success a product of him turning it around, or maybe more of a product of some weaker lineups? Because he's going to be tested certainly tonight by this Milwaukee Brewers lineup. The Seattle bullpen is atrocious. I'm telling you right now, if you have any interest in Seattle in this game, and I know Anthony liked the Seattle first 5 team total over, which makes a lot of sense to me. I think you got to look Seattle either a team total. If you think they can hit Davies, take them first 5 or team total first 5 specifically, because Milwaukee's bullpen is much better than Seattle's. Josh Hader is available to pitch tonight because he didn't pitch or they didn't play yesterday. Milwaukee, they had the day off, so he's fully ready to go. You don't want to be sitting there with an over with Hader coming into the game in the 8th inning and biting your fingernails, worrying if the ship has sailed on that one, because he's not going to give up a whole lot very often. So the total's been pushed up. I think Seattle can hit Milwaukee tonight. What will Milwaukee be able to do against Gonzalez? I think they'll hit Gonzalez personally because this is a step up in class for him compared to the lineups he's faced recently. So I could see the people liking the over here in this game, now up to 10.5. Donnie, any thoughts on the Mariners and Brewers?
Yeah, up a full run, which is interesting. Opens up at 9.5, now sitting at 10.5. The one thing you have to like is because, I'll actually agree with whoever was saying that in the chat box, Seattle first 5 innings, because it gets back to the old adage, you want to isolate some of the mismatches that you believe to have. And Seattle, I think, actually has a nice little mismatch here over the first 5 innings. If you take a look at Zach Davies, right-handed pitcher, xFIP is 4.91, which is terrible. Now, when you actually take a look at his numbers against right-handed batters, since he's a righty, he's doing very well. 179 batters he's faced from the right-hand side, weighted on base average is 300, and ISO is only 127. Very manageable doing the job. But the thing you have to like here about Seattle tonight, Ian, those 8 eligible batters, since again, it's a National League ballpark, 6 of those batters are coming from the left-hand side, and 5 of those batters have elevated numbers, which they should hit Davies. And when we take a look at Davies' overall statistics to lefties, Ian, 372 weighted on base average and an ISO 2.01. They should be able to get some runs tonight. It's a really nice advantage Seattle has against Davies over these first 5 innings. But you do bring up a great point. In that rested bullpen, Milwaukee is no stranger that if this game gets close late, we've seen Hader come in for 3 innings at a time, and it's lights out, man.
No question. And when you look at Seattle's lineup, we've got Malik Smith, J.P. Crawford, Domingo Santana, Dan Vogelbach, Omar Narvaez, Kyle Seager. How's Mac Williamson still in this lineup? Sick of looking at Mac Williamson. I mean, what the hell are we doing here if we're Scott Service? Now, not that Scott Service is a manager that's got a big shelf life with Seattle. He's going to be out on his ass probably after this season. But Mac Williamson is just how many times have I seen that guy get ground into a double play with the bases loaded? It drove me nuts. I saw it a couple times this weekend. But he's still in there somehow. D. Gordon and Marco Gonzalez rounding out the lineup for the Brewers. You've got Yasmani Grandal, Christian Yelich, Ryan Braun, Mike Moustakas, Jesus Aguilar, Ben Gamel, Hernan Perez, Zach Davies, Orlando Arcia. Interesting, no Lorenzo Cain for the Milwaukee Brewers in the lineup tonight, probably due to the matchup in this game. So I actually did bet the over in this game as a smaller play for me. I got 10 on it. It's 10.5 now across the board. That's the way I'd probably lean there. We got Pittsburgh, Houston, 3 games left on the slate. Houston minus 295, total 8.5 across the board. Trevor Williams, Garrett Cole, your 2 starting pitchers. Cole's only Achilles heel, Don. He seems to be the home run ball because he gets strikeouts. He usually keeps the runs allowed at a minimum, but every now and then the home run ball monster is going to get him. That seems to be the only fault in Garrett Cole for the most part for the Houston Astros. Trevor Williams made his return to the Pirates rotation. Last time out, it was against Detroit, and it wasn't very good for him against that relatively light hitting Tigers lineup. They definitely got the better of Williams in that start, knocked him around a little bit. That's a concern for me now going against a Houston Astros team that's suddenly starting to get some key bats back in the lineup, including, of course, Jose Altuve recently. This Alvarez kid for the Houston Astros has come up and just lit the organization on fire here with how well he's been at the plate since he got called up. So this Astros lineup starting to look dangerous again. They went through a little swoon there when they were battling those injuries, but they got put up a big number. Final game of that series against the New York Yankees on Sunday. Williams not necessarily looking right. By the way, the lineups in this game, this is big for Pittsburgh. Brian Reynolds is not in the Pittsburgh Pirates lineup. This guy's hitting damn near 350 this season. He's been absolutely terrific and not in the lineup for Clint Hurdle's team tonight. That's a big bat out of there. So interesting to see that is not in this Pirates starting lineup tonight. So interesting game to consider. Maybe you look Houston team total over. I think they might be able to hit Williams, but I don't know if I trust the Pirate bats against Cole in Houston. Donnie, what are your thoughts on this game?
Yeah, it's interesting here because the one thing I always dislike about Houston, and it could be such an advantage when you're taking a look at totals, they seem to never open the roof down there at Minute Maid Park. When we just talked about the Milwaukee Brewers, that roof is going to be open tonight in Milwaukee, 80 degrees, let that heat and humidity in. And also, Ian, we've been seeing out west with the Arizona Diamondbacks, look at the difference between when that roof is open, which it is quite a bit at night now, 100 degrees. Last night you had two aces on the mound. They absolutely got rocked. So something to keep in mind, the roof will be closed, even though it's only 83 degrees and humid down in Houston tonight. But getting back to the game itself, you know, Reynolds is out of the lineup, but when you look at weighted on base averages versus right-handed pitching, now I know Garrett Cole's a really good pitcher. Maybe he's geeked up going against his old team, the Pittsburgh Pirates, but this lineup, weighted on base averages, Ian, starting out for the first 7 guys, 368, 364, 357, 451, 347, 347, and 449. So when you take a look at a total, what do we say that? 8.5 primarily across the board. We think this Houston lineup's going to be able to hit Trevor Williams. He's not a high strikeout guy, pitches to contact. And this lineup's getting back to the basics now. George Springer's back in there. Jose Altuve's back in there. A lot of elevated guys with weighted on base averages. And in this day and age in Major League Baseball, you're getting an 8.5 with 2 talented lineups. I think you're going to be able to get that over, or at least take a flyer on the over.
Yeah, definitely leaning over the total. I'm definitely leaning toward Houston team. I'm going to make that one an official play. I'm going to get in on Houston team total over because I actually had the over in Williams' start against Detroit, and part of that was, I always am leery of these pitchers when they make their return from an injury or an extended stint when they're not starting. And we saw that with Trevor Williams in his last start, and he just was not effective. And that was a much weaker lineup than the one he's going to face tonight. Next game, Oakland, St. Louis, down to the last 2 games now on the rotation. Bassett, Flaherty, your 2 starting pitchers. We've got St. Louis and Flaherty laying about minus 150. The total is 9, shaded to the under across the board here at about minus 120. Anthony made a compelling case for Oakland at a plus 140 price here, and it's an interesting way to look. They're 12-4 in their last 16 road games. Bob Melvin's team has played better baseball for the most part in recent games. Their offense has been pretty solid. Bassett's a guy that has regressed a little bit. He's had several good starts earlier in the season, sort of come back down to earth just a little bit for this Oakland Athletics team. But he's going up against the St. Louis lineup that we've all been frustrated with it and how they've not really put it all together to the extent that we thought they would. Obviously, we knew Paul Goldschmidt was going to be the big addition in the offseason from Arizona. It's been hit or miss with him. Same with Paul DeYoung. He struggled. Marcell Ozuna. Can I get one good at bat from this guy, for crying out loud? It seems like I rarely can. Jose Martinez, it's been a little bit of a down offensive season for the veteran catcher, Yadier Molina. I mean, Dexter Fowler's a little spotty. Same with Wong. It's just been Matt Carpenter's not been the same this year. I mean, up and down for the Cardinals, not been the same. Now, can Bassett go on the road and navigate his way through this lineup? Bassett's one of those guys, I envision him as just 3-4 runs over 6 innings kind of guy. He's not going to completely shut you down, but he can at least at times be able to keep you in a game. On the other hand, Flaherty's numbers are very, very good at home. He's pitched very, very well at Busch Stadium, going up against an Athletics team that definitely has some pop, but you can get some swings and misses from them. If there was an under that I could take maybe in this game, I maybe would take it in this game here tonight. We'll see. But I think Oakland at the plus price, given the way they're playing, and nothing's coming easily for the Cardinals right now. This might be a road underdog that has some bite to it tonight. Donnie, what's your take on Oakland, St. Louis?
Yeah, I'd say what's interesting here because you probably get the, I don't even want to, the novice gamblers is a bad term to word, but maybe the guy, just the public guy looking at things like, oh man, Oakland doesn't have Chris Davis in the lineup tonight. There's no way I can back him or take a team total over or even an over. But when you take a look at overall going up against right-handed pitching this year, Chris Davis only has a 311 weighted on base average and a 178 ISO. So he's not exactly raking it. So taking him out of the lineup isn't that big of a misnomer for tonight. The matchups itself make sense when you're looking toward an under with both St. Louis and Oakland tonight, just because of the way you have Flaherty. He's got a 3.54 xFIP, which is really good. If you take a look at the plate appearances from the right-hand side, Ian, he does very well when he's a right-handed pitcher, obviously, versus right-handed bats. Lefties is where he struggles. The only problem that we're looking at from Oakland, we have Olsen in the lineup, Grossman, and Profar. Only 3 lefties in that lineup out of the 8 batters. I need to see a little bit more of that. Now, we take a look at from a St. Louis perspective. You're right. When you look at just take all the numbers out of the equation on St. Louis, and you just say, you know what? I'm a fan of baseball. Let me look at this roster. They should rake, but something's really missing. Now, the only thing that you would have in your favor tonight, if we're taking a look at Bassett, you're right, 4.52 xFIP. Some of these balls are going to get into the air. But his weighted on base average, both sides, Ian, a 311 and a 275. Now, his ISO to left-handed batters is a little bit elevated at 211, but the same problem comes in. You have Carpenter and Fowler and Wong, 3 lefties. That's it. The rest from the right-hand side. So the matchups for an under make sense. The only drawback a little bit, 88 at first pitch and 9 miles an hour. The wind is blowing out. But this sets up, I think, for an under here.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, in terms of a game that stuck out is maybe something that can stay under the total. Oakland St. Louis was one of those games. I like Washington Miami first 5 under as well. Scherzer rolling along. Richards has actually been pretty good at home. That was the other one that I think could be lower scoring as well. Even Atlanta and Chicago. I mean, it's 12, and I understand the wind's blowing out at Wrigley, but Alzolay is a guy that really has turned some heads here and has got some upside. It looked pretty good in his first appearance, albeit this is now going to be his first start against a tremendous Atlanta lineup. But that Atlanta lineup the last few games, it showed signs of regressing. You're not going to keep hitting. I'm sorry. You're not going to keep hitting at the clip that you've been hitting for the last month if you're the Atlanta Braves. At some point, Acuna and Swanson and Freeman and Donaldson and even Riley, we've seen him level off just a little bit. You're going to eventually go through some growing pains at the plate a little bit. Maybe Atlanta's doing that now. All right, last game, Cincinnati and the Angels, interleague action. Another interleague matchup here. LA Angels minus 140, home favorites, total 9, shaded to the under. Maley on the mound for the Reds, Andrew Haney for the LA Angels. And I know when it comes to Andrew Haney, he's a guy that's definitely, not exactly put it all together. Since his in the last couple of starts, he's had a little bit of a tough time against Toronto. He gave up 5 runs, 4 hits, 4 walks, 3.2 innings of work in that start. We'll see if he can bounce back here against the Cincinnati Reds. But you talk about this Reds team overall, they have played better baseball in recent games. Swept Houston last week, a good Astros team. I thought they battled Milwaukee pretty tough over the weekend at Miller Park. Their lineup is starting to get going. And really, to be honest, Donnie, Cincinnati's offense was terrible early in the season. We remember back in April, this team wasn't hitting at all. But they called up Nick Senzel, who's one of their bigger prospects. And ever since really they called him up, it's, people get a little energy, adrenaline flows through the clubhouse. Oh, one of our big young future prospects, blue chippers coming up to the big team. It gets everybody a little bit fired up, and the lineup overall, everybody's starting to hit a little bit better, it seems, ever since Nick Senzel got recalled to the Cincinnati Reds. So I think this is going to be a little bit of a tricky matchup here for Haney. Maley has actually, even though he's winless in June, he's allowed 3 runs or less in each of those starts for the Cincinnati Reds against this LA Angels team that is, making their return home after a road trip here for this series against the Cincinnati Reds. We'll see how they fare here in this game. Cincinnati's always right now, and I know I've taken a couple shots with Cincinnati as an underdog in recent games. This might be one where I lean that way. I respect the Angels though, and the way their lineup has performed. I just don't know if I can trust Heaney here in this start against the Cincinnati Reds offense overall. Even the bullpen for the Reds has been a little bit better as well in recent games. And you talk about teams that early in the season were not playing well, that were burning money for their backers. That was Cincinnati. But they've turned a corner and they've played better, starting to win games, playing more competitive, the lineup's starting to hit. this is now the time you may be wanting to look for spots to back the Cincinnati Reds. So I didn't get involved. I would lean a little bit to the over and lean a little bit to Cincinnati, but that's just going to be in the lean category for me with this game. Donnie, your take on the Reds and the Angels?
Yeah, I actually think it's a decent shot here for the dog in this environment traveling out. Now, look, the LA lineup looks pretty good tonight. But again, we're talking about matchups here as opposed to just saying, you know what, I think this lineup is going to be able to hit. Because if we're taking a look, about a 50-50 ticket split over under at 9, the line has come down a little bit. And I actually agree with it here. And the reason being with Cincinnati, you're looking at one left-handed batter in the lineup. That's Joey Votto. The rest of the batters against this lefty Heaney, 8 of them, since we're obviously playing in an American League ballpark. XFIP for Heaney is 4.73. Now, his weighted on base averages between lefties and righties isn't that different. It's 317 and 312. When we're looking at those numbers, if you're not familiar, 320 to 330 is about average. So he's actually slightly better against both lefties and righties. But here's the issue that he's going to run into tonight. You have an ISO to lefties of 212 and an ISO to righties of 270. So if you can catch this guy, you'll be able to drive this into the gap or maybe a home run. Then taking a look at the Reds lineup itself, they got some elevated ISO numbers. Nick Senzel versus lefties, a 264 ISO. Eugenio Suarez, a 226 ISO. Yasiel Puig, 267. Phillip Ervin, 273. Farmer, 273. You got some guys that if they can catch up to this lefty, they're going to be able to take them deep in this instance. I think the Reds are a live dog in this one. Now, looking from the opposite side of the perspective here and saying, you know what? Well, Tyler Mahley's not really a good pitcher. Technically, I would agree with that. Lefties absolutely smash him, but it's not like this is a really lefty-dominated lineup for the Los Angeles Angels. You're going to have Listella, Ohtani, Calhoun, and Rengifo, which is 4 of them out of the 9 batters. And to right-handed batters, which he's faced 180 of them on the season, Ian, 275 weight on base average and an ISO of 114. He can calm those right-handed bats. I think it might be worth a while here on the Reds. Take a little bit of plus money here.
All right, and you can get as high as plus 130 right now with Cincinnati in this game against the LA Angels. Before I recap what I'm liking tonight on this card and we say goodbye, Parlay Poppy, you asked me, Toronto, Saskatchewan, CFL next Monday, Canada Day, a Canada Day CFL game next Monday night, July 1st. Looking forward to it. Hey, you got 2 winless football teams. You got Saskatchewan laying 11.5 points in that game, a total 53.5. Cody Fajardo has actually been pretty decent. Last week he played pretty well, moved the football, moved the offense pretty well against that Ottawa Red Blacks team. The problem was Saskatchewan's defense couldn't stop Dominique Davis and the Red Blacks offense, which did whatever they wanted in that football game. I think Saskatchewan's defense, which has really not played as well as I thought so far, they're going to play a lot better here at home. This is a very limited Toronto Argonaut offense. I'm not sold on James Franklin one bit. He stunk last week against my Ticats. He was awful. The offensive line couldn't protect, couldn't block for him. James Wilder Jr. tried to get something going, running the football for the Argos in that game, but that offensive line looked like a mess for the Argos. And against a Saskatchewan defense that can, throw Charleston Hughes at you, Micah Johnson on a really, really decent defensive line. Now, it didn't show up last week, I think, back home, though, against a Toronto offense that looks very limited. Franklin in that loud environment in Saskatchewan, I haven't seen enough of him either last year or in the first game of their season this year to trust him. I just don't. He hasn't played good enough football. He's been inaccurate. He's had more interceptions than touchdowns since he's been a starting quarterback in the CFL. That's an issue for me. I don't know if I want to lay 11.5. You do have Toronto off an embarrassing 64-14 loss against Hamilton. You would think pride sets in a little bit. I mean, you got absolutely humiliated last week. Maybe that's enough for you to want to compete and play better here. But the under's the way I would go in this game. 53.5 the total. I know it's 6-1 over the total right now in the CFL, but every game can't go over the total. You got to have an under at some point. I think Saskatchewan's defense can hold the Argo offense in check, and you're looking at a situation where I think Saskatchewan's offense, Fajardo's good, but Toronto's defense looks ahead of their offense. I would certainly lean under 53.5 in this game. All right, to recap what I'm on Mets Phillies over 10.5. I'm also looking at the Colorado San Francisco over 7.5. I like Minnesota Twins minus 105 against Tampa Bay. I like the Seattle Milwaukee over 10. It's 10.5 now. I like the Houston team total over, which I added late. My, I guess, play of the day, if you want to call it that, I'll go Texas Detroit over 10. I've liked Texas Detroit over more than anything today. Zimmerman's an over machine, 5-0 to the over his last 5 starts. Let's go Texas Detroit over the total of 10. as my play of the day, and I've also got wagers, smaller half-unit wagers on the other ones that I mentioned. Donnie, before we wrap up the show, throw a bone to our viewers here. What play or what pick stands out to you tonight, baseball, that we can make some money with in MLB?
Yeah, we've been digging on Fridays, having a really nice run. I only gave out 2 plays today. I'm going to give them right out here on the show as well. We already went over it a little bit earlier today. The second play I put in today was the Philadelphia Phillies over 5.5. Juice is about -116 is what I picked it up. I think the Phillies should be able to get 6 runs tonight and be able to cash that total. But the very first one I put in, Ian, I didn't even need to wait for lineups. I read some tea leaves with one Joey Gallo coming back to the lineup today, and it matches up well. And it's so funny that you said that you really like this game. I got team total over 5.5 plus 100, which doesn't sit too far off them. I'm still looking at FanDuel right now, -106. So the juice is not that much different, but you're right. Detroit pitcher over 5 xFIP for Zimmerman. And the way he gets rocked, Ian, is from the left-hand side. And it just so happens Texas rolls out those lefties and should be able to steam through. Let's just listen to the first 6 batters in the lineup tonight with their weighted on base averages versus right-handed pitching: 417, 501, 344, 359, 444, and 372. I've rode that wave all weekend long with the Rangers. They're hot, now getting even more talent back. There's no reason why in an 85-degree night in Detroit that they can't get 6 runs in. I love that call by you.
Awesome stuff. Donnie sent out a team total on Texas. I sent out a full game over on this game. So, hopefully we didn't put the kibosh on it. Let's hope for some winners all around, some runs at Comerica Park tonight, Texas and Detroit. Great stuff. Donnie, it's been amazing. It's been a blast being on with you again. Great stuff. Thanks for joining me here on the show. Great that you could join us as I filled in as a guest host for Jimmy the Bag, who will be returning tomorrow for the 2 Betting with the Bag shows. So make sure you join us 11:30 a.m. Eastern, or 11 a.m. Eastern, sorry. Let me get that right now. 11 a.m. Eastern, 5:30 p.m. Eastern time, Monday to Friday. Jimmy will be back hosting this show tomorrow. Thanks to Donnie Rightside for joining me on the late show. Thanks to Anthony and Parlay Poppy for joining me on the morning show. Enjoy your Tuesday night. Good luck with your MLB wagers. Thanks for watching Betting with the Bag. Enjoy the games, everybody, and good luck.